Hello, and welcome to a new episode.
Welcome back to us doing whatever the hell we want to do, because it's not like we're getting paid for this anyway. Although I did check yesterday, we are nearly close to our first check from YouTube. We might get £60 through the letterbox at some point soon, so we're going to be able to buy those flumps soon. That's exciting.
Let's go on Amazon and see how much the flump marketplace is.
Brexit has increased the flump market price significantly.
It is £5 a kilo right now.
Fucking A, boy. That's a lot of flumps.
Well, that's just normal marshmallows. If you go into the premium flump market, you gotta go to actual sell. There we go. It is, Jesus Christ, that's expensive.
How much is it now?
$5.49 for a bag of 150 grams. What the fuck?
Yeah, Robert, this is your terrible, awful, silly idea, so I'm actually going to leave the introduction up to you, because this is all your fault, and I take literally zero responsibility for what is about to happen.
One of the things that both me and Dave struggle with whilst creating this is it's essentially watching a whole anime show, because quite often we review things that one of us either doesn't like or the other one thinks is a bit shit. It's quite common, because we do a lot of things for content, per se. You know, like raiding the Capitol building and all that.
Getting arrested by the feds to own the libs.
And becoming a federal informant, too, to own the libs.
Classic.
So we've decided to try something a bit different, where we were going to talk about something that we both actually quite enjoy, and we're wondering if we could make content out of it by just having a conversation, since a lot of you are always like, it's really nice hearing you guys talk. It's one of the things we suffer from in this show, because we set ourselves up for talking about mecha and anime, but me and Dave are quite happy to talk about any old bullshit. So this is your problem, and this is what you get. So we're reviewing Votons for...
This one that you've picked is not one that I have watched enough of, so the way we're coming at this is you, the old head of this particular series, who have watched all of it and are a big fan, and me...
You mean like everything we fucking review?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm interested in it, but I've never really had the... It's not that I've not had the time, I've generally just been too fucking lazy to actually sit down and watch this series, so I'm kind of coming at it from the perspective of someone who has only watched the first season of this show, and you are a man who has watched all of it, probably several times, and are quite into it. So I think we've got an interesting balance of perspectives, because you know what's coming next, whereas I don't, apart from kind of what I have absorbed through cultural osmosis, because it's like this show is pretty iconic. Speaking of this show, we haven't actually introduced it, so again, this is your fault, Robert, when you introduce the show we've decided to review.
We are going to be watching David Lynch's Twin Peaks. Specifically, we're going to talk about the first season, so from pilot to episode.
Technically, season 1 has like 8 episodes, but that's including the pilot, which is basically a standalone movie.
Yeah.
Because at the time, they didn't know if it was going to get picked up or not, but it was, and then it became like a massive success, but we'll get onto that. I think the idea for this is we're going to try and make our way through the franchise. When we were talking about this earlier, we were like, okay, we're going to do season 1, we'll do a video on that, we'll do a video on season 2, maybe break that up into 2 parts, because season 2 is a whole kettle of fish. Fire Walk with Me, and then we can do the revival series as well, because Rob wants to cosplay as Red Letter Media, so fuck it, why not?
Why not? The other thing I was going to say was we're not going to try and explain it, because there is no point in explaining Twin Peaks. What you should really talk about is how your opinion of it is, rather as being like, I think this represents this, and I think that's how the director feels. Because David Lynch doesn't want you to think about all of this. David Lynch wants you to watch this, feel emotions, feel fear.
He kind of wants to put you in a particular environment that is both beautiful and wholesome, but also absolutely fucking terrifying.
Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Why will elaborate on that?
No, I won't.
Yeah. Oh, this will be full of spoilers too. Like,
actually, to be fair, season 1, there's not really a whole lot to spoil about the series itself.
There is, though.
There's a few things, I guess. But season 1 is all about setup, so there's not too much that we can give away.
Should we talk a little bit about David Lynch before this, or just keep it focused on Twin Peaks?
I think we should probably do something as like the genesis of Twin Peaks and how it came about, and also the landscape of television at the time, because it was very different back in the late 80s, early 90s.
So we won't veer into David Lynch's previous career beyond saying he did the Elephant Man, well, Eraserhead, Elephant Man, Dune, and then Blue Velvet, and then Twin Peaks. So Eraserhead being this spooky ass shit that was like a student film that went completely out of control. And I think he became famous because he became this big underground circuit thing. Yeah, and basically he ended up directing The Elephant Man, which is a fantastic film about Joseph Merrick. And then that's around the time, like, he directs Dune, which is a colossal, hilarious mistake. He tried to get his name removed from it as well, but he also, at that time, turned down the opportunity to direct Return of the Jedi, because that's the other thing. Like, David Lynch has always been this guy who is extremely well respected as a director, and they keep trying to get him to direct things that he's just like, I don't want this. See you later.
He's one of those people who seems absolutely adamant about how he is going to do absolutely whatever the hell he wants if it means he'll enjoy it, and if he's not interested, he's not interested. He's not looking to play anyone else's game.
Hey Robert, why do you like David Lynch? Gee, I don't know, Dave.
He's got such a unique style as well, and just his whole vibe and reputation. He's quite a reclusive and strange and eccentric figure, to the point that people who are like trying to write profiles on him, David Foster Wallace quite famously tried to write this profile of him when they were filming, I think it was Lost Highway, and Lynch just refused to speak to him for the entire time he was actually trying to write the profile of David Lynch.
I think it's also because David Lynch doesn't want his films to become represented by some kind of thing about himself.
The fact that Lynchian has become a verb just about, he'd probably be quite annoyed about.
I think he absolutely detests it.
How will David Lynch define something Lynchian?
I answer that my doctor has told me not to think about this.
All too often, when you've got like a writer or a director that you admire, and then you actually hear them speak and find out about them as a person, they can either be a disappointment or a colossal asshole. Whereas David Lynch is kind of what you would expect David Lynch to be in the best way possible. I was watching this like round table discussion, and he comes across as a complete maniac. Don't get me wrong, but also this very well-meaning kind of person, this very humble figure. Like when people around the table are saying, and what you did with Twin Peaks and what you achieved here, and every single time that happens, he stops them and he's like, no, me and Mark Frost did that. It was a collaborative process. We did that together.
Stop 1 second. Mark Frost and I, did that. And Mark Frost is at least 50% of it.
And we should probably talk about Mark Frost as well. He's very much the forgotten guy who's involved in Twin Peaks. It's kind of a shame.
It is, but Mark Frost is like, I suppose the best way to talk about him is he's not known for much before Twin Peaks, because what he was before was he was a television writer, so he wrote episodes for like Hill Street Blues. It's like a cop procedural, for lack of a better word, but it's like the first cop procedural.
He was quite experimental in his approach to television. Like at the time, and I guess this is us tying into the discussion of what television was just now. We currently live in a golden age of television, really, with stuff like Netflix being able to bankroll all sorts of weird and wacky and unusual stuff. You've got things like, The Sopranos have come out, Breaking Bad, all of these shows that have been inspired by the show that we're discussing. But back in the late 80s and 90s, everything was
things were more episodic. So like, not to bring up Star Trek, as I always manage to do in every review.
I was waiting for it.
But Star Trek is the baseline for describing things at this time. Things were episodic and didn't necessarily have a plot. They were weekly shows that you would tune in every week and watch an episode. If they had a continuous plot, they tended to be soap operas that didn't tend to be short series like what we have now, where, like, for example, what was that thing with David Tennant recently? Call Me Des, or whatever it was called. The thing about Dennis Nielsen.
Yeah, which was really good, actually. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing it up, is things like that didn't exist. So there wasn't like a limited series. That wasn't a thing.
Or the idea of a very director-focused, a very auteur kind of production, I guess you could say. At the time, it was quite... And I'm trying to phrase this in a way that's not rude or dismissive of people's work, but it was quite formulaic.
But that was the point of TV then.
Yeah, at the time the idea was to try and make the viewer not realize that they are watching, a television show. Not remind them that this is a piece of cinema or a piece of film. It's just tell them the story, keep it simple, keep it straightforward. We can't have time to do anything fancy. We've got to film fucking 50 of these for a series kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Mark Frost is forgotten about because he's always been a TV writer. Before we pour too much praise on him, also wrote the Fantastic Four movie from 2005. So like,
he wrote two of them actually. He wrote the Fantastic Four movie from 2005, and then he's also the co-writer for Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. So we cannot let him forget that.
Well, have you ever heard how they came up with the concept for Twin Peaks? Because I think it's a beautiful thing.
They were collaborating a bit. They were working on some sort of project, and Twin Peaks spun out as a result, but I'll let you tell the story better than me.
Basically, Mark Frost and David Lynch were working on producing, I think it was a biopic of Marilyn Monroe. And it was supposed to be it's the secret life of Marilyn Monroe. It's an interesting concept. What they came up with was they had this weird idea when they were sitting in a coffee shop of it was just a body washing up on a shore, and that's all Twin Peaks' origin is. Go forth from there.
So just that initial hook of X happens, what occurs.
And then when they came together with those ideas, then they started thinking, well, how could we mix like a police investigation show? Things like Hill Street Blues and Law and Order were becoming very popular. So their idea was to mix that and then start mixing in all the town's little secrets. So all these things start to unravel because they're having to come and investigate.
Which is a really cool hook for a show. I mean, I'm sure some series have done that idea before, like, you know, small town secrets. That's not something that Twin Peaks invented.
But it was for TV.
Yeah, and you'd be hard pressed if you were going to tell a story like that now. Twin Peaks is so iconic and did it so well that is like the benchmark that you have to try and match yourself up to if you're going to tell that story, because that's what everyone is immediately going to think. If your pitch for a series now is unraveling dark secrets in small town America, everyone's going to go, you're doing Twin Peaks.
Well, that's what The Killing was. That's what Bates Motel is.
What was that one with David Tennant, the British one?
Doctor Who. No.
Broadchurch. There we go.
Broadchurch.
Broadchurch is a more grounded and gritty Twin Peaks, basically.
She's dead. Wrapped in plastic.
Do you want to do like a sort of a short, snappy summary of season 1 just to kind of introduce it?
Twin Peaks season 1 is the investigation of Laura Palmer's death. It is specifically the trying to figure out the motive or possible motives of who would harm the homecoming queen. As the show goes on, you find out that most of the people in the town have secrets, including the sheriff, and all these characters' lives are intertwined in ways that you wouldn't think is correct, from affairs to drugs to crime, and not all is what it seems in Twin Peaks.
Everybody knew she was in trouble, but we didn't do anything.
There's also some spooky shenanigans, for lack of a better word, going on that are being investigated. Dale Cooper is sent to investigate, and he is a very open-minded investigator who, through the powers of dreams
And really being a big fan of Tibet.
and even things like coincidences and even fate, will help him unravel this mystery. So how should we start discussing it, other than the greatest quote of all time in Twin Peaks?
Why don't we start with that?
She's dead, wrapped in plastic.
It's a hell of a hook for the initial thing. Some fucking fisherman guy who immediately you pick up things aren't great between him and his wife, steps out onto a beach and discovers the body of a girl wrapped in plastic, and then he has to phone the police. That is a strong fucking hook.
And it's all the fog. There's a foghorn sounding. It's all spooky looking. You can feel how cold it is.
Right out the gate, it's a very different kind of show from what you saw at the time. It's not something that we'll appreciate as much, how different that was at the time. These long, lingering shots and this more artistic take on the police procedural. But at the time, that was completely unique. People just weren't doing this sort of shit.
But yeah, that's how the show starts, with a dead body. And in the sheriff's department, it's called in. You've got Sheriff Harry Truman, Dr. Will Hayward, and Deputy Andy Brennan looking at the body. And these are like about 5 of the main cast are introduced in the first 30 seconds. And then the main plot hook, who is Laura Palmer, and that she's dead.
Although even though she's dead, you're going to be seeing a whole fucking lot of her, don't worry. It's like David Lynch completely fell in love with the actress, which is something he seems to do, and then he just finds ways to bring her back in.
Well, that's the thing, is like, if I remember rightly, he wanted someone that looked like Marilyn Monroe. And that's why Laura Palmer is probably even in some ways like so culturally iconic. So even if you haven't seen Twin Peaks, you'll have seen the picture of Laura Palmer. What we start seeing is how the whole town begins to react. And this is all in the pilot. It's a very long pilot. If you're not into slow TV, this is not for you. Step out right away.
Yeah, no, I think that's one thing that we are probably going to want to mention. Even though I would heartily recommend this show, it's not fast-paced. David Lynch does not do fast-paced anything most of the time. He likes to take his time with his stories and his films and his TV series, as it turns out. He likes to really linger on stuff with his camera angles and his pans and everything, and that spreads throughout the series as a whole. I enjoy it, but then we've established that I like slow films, so.
And as the show goes on, you start to introduce to the themes, as in the musical cues of different characters. You're seeing how the whole town reacts.
Oh, do I get to rant about leitmotifs now, Robert?
No, not yet. Let me finish my point.
No.
As we're going on through the town, we're seeing how different people react. So Laura's boyfriend, Bobby.
Who's a dick,
but he's having an affair, and he could be a suspect then because he was having an affair with another woman who is married to another man who has reappeared just as this murder's occurred. And then you're introduced to more characters, and you're introduced to Donna, James, Big Ed's introduced, the Palmers, as in Laura's mother and father, are both introduced, who there's something not quite right there.
Yeah, no, it's like their daughters just died.
But it's even before that, before they know that. something not quite right about them, Dave. Oh, and not to rant about it, but Leland Palmer, played by Ray Wise, who is my favourite actor of all time.
He does a damn good job in this, actually. He
is one of them people who appears in things and just raises the bar for that thing. We start finding out that another girl gone missing, which is Renette Polanski, and she appears across a different state. She comes out across the state line. So the FBI become involved.
And that is where a particular music cue hits, and we cut to a car with a man speaking into a dictaphone. And thus is born one of the best TV characters of all time, because Dale Cooper, or Special Agent Dale Cooper, pardon me, is pretty fucking great, actually.
Diane, 11:30 a.m., February 24th. Entering the town of Twin Peaks. It's 5 miles south of the Canadian border, 12 miles west of the state line.
In a series full of really, really excellent and interesting and just downright fucking weird characters, such as Log Lady, can't forget her. Yeah, Dale Cooper is straight
Fun
up.
fact, Log Lady is Jack Nance's ex-wife, who plays Pete Martell.
Seriously?
Yeah. Oh, everyone in this had worked with David Lynch at some point. David Lynch was good friends with him.
He has this thing about casting his pals, basically. He likes to find people he works with well, and then just keeps doing that. And he has another sort of good way of describing it. The whole framework of season 1 is this tragic and brutal death of a very beloved central figure of the town in Laura Palmer, being like the tree that branches out into all of these strange subplots and these weird shenanigans that are going on throughout town.
Well, at the end of the day, you find out in season 1 that Laura Palmer, although she was the homecoming queen, was cheating on her boyfriend. She was
doing drugs,
prostituting herself, and she was also making pornography, I think you find out as well.
Yes, yeah, that was something she was doing with Leo and the fat Canadian dude,
Jacques Renault.
Yeah, she was a bit of a fucked up girl, it turns out, and that's kind of the central theme of Twin Peaks season 1, I guess you could say. Like Twin Peaks, and then why Dale Cooper falls in love with it is because on the surface it's this very wholesome and pleasant small town American space, but then all of season 1 is peeling back that cushy American wallpaper and revealing this really sordid shit that's happening underneath, and that is present throughout basically all of the plots in season 1, none of which get resolved, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, don't worry about it, it's Twin Peaks.
You know, this is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
I love David Lynch's and Mark Frost's character design.
I think the best way to describe it is all of their characters are deceptively unusual in different ways. Like Dale Cooper, initially you'd think that he's just this square-jawed FBI agent, and then it turns out that he's really, really, really into Tibet and bases a lot of his investigations off of intuition and fate. I think the famous scene from season 1 is the way he kind of figures out who they're going to investigate next, and he's got like a bottle set up on a wooden stump, and he has someone say the name of a suspect, and then he throws a rock at the bottle, and whichever one breaks the bottle, he decides that that's who they're investigating next.
Dr. Lawrence Jacoby.
You did it! You hit it!
Lucy, make a note that the bottle was struck but did not break. Very important.
That's the kind of shit that Dale Cooper comes out with, and it's delightfully weird. And all of the characters are kind of, well, not all of them, but they all have odd little quirks like that make them quite interesting or unique or different, except James and Donna, who are boring. I'm sorry, I keep bullying those characters. They're very boring! There's the whole genre of, like, the occult detective, and this isn't quite that, but...
It's not far off it.
it's kind of brushing up. It is occult detective adjacent with some of the methodology that Dale Cooper has, and I've seen people describe him as this kind of Sherlock-like character, like this man who possesses incredible intellect and incredible intuition and can just pick up on stuff, but he's very different from the depictions of Sherlock that you've seen recently, which I'm honestly not a big fan of. Like, no insult intended to Benedict Cumberbatch, great actor, did a damn good job in that modern Sherlock series and did as much as you could with the train wreck that turned into.
What's the writer again for that?
Oh god, what's he called? Yeah, hang on, let's look this up.
Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, are we about to bully Stephen Moffat? Because I'm 100%
fuck off, curly haired prick.
He just needs to stop. Basically, just get him to write the premise and the initial hook, and then take the series off him before he does what he inevitably does. Modern Sherlock depictions tend tend to be these quite cynical and obtuse, and they make him into an egotistical asshole, basically.
When Sherlock Holmes is just like, he's just smarter than you, deal with it.
And that's what I love about Dale Cooper. He's just this inherently wholesome and optimistic guy who doesn't have a bad word to say about anyone that he meets.
Modern Sherlock is more depicted like Albert Rosenfeld, I think his name is. He's the guy who shows up who does all the autopsy stuff.
Agent Cooper will be right with you.
Yeah, I can hear perfectly well, Curly.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is a great example of it. Like, you've got Dale Cooper who just comes in and is just like, this place is great. The coffee's amazing. Everything is pie. I love it. And then you've got Albert who pitches up and is just this arrogant, egotistical city slicker who thinks that everyone he meets is a bunch of fucking country bumpkins and fuck all of you.
He's not wrong, though.
But what I like, that's an opportunity to kind of show you the nature of Dale Cooper as a person as well, because he's come to really quite like these people and respect their way of life, and he finds them very endearing. And he sees Albert coming in and insulting everybody and constantly like throwing shade at the sheriff until the point that Harry fucking socks him one. And then when Albert turns around and tries to get Cooper to testify that, yeah, this guy assaulted me, Cooper just tells him, you kind of had that coming, dude. You were constantly provoking him. You were being a total dick. I quite like these people. No, I'm not testifying to anything. And so there's all of these lovely little moments that set Dale Cooper up as this quite... He's a Boy Scout, but in the best way possible, because he's also very articulate, very intelligent, and very intuitive in his approach. Like, he immediately picks up on the secrets that are going on in this town, and you need a character like that in a place as deceptively seedy as Twin Peaks. The show's reputation, if you've heard of Twin Peaks through cultural osmosis, which is something that I had prior to actually sitting down and properly watching this.
Brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
One thing that you'll be aware of is that it has these moments where shit gets a bit wacky and strange and unusual.
It's just David Lynch.
What surprised me, though, is there's not nearly as much of that as the show's reputation suggests that there might be. Like, if you go by Twin Peaks' reputation alone, you'd think it would just be like an art house student film project, kind of like Eraserhead.
You haven't seen season 2 yet.
Okay, I can't speak about season 2. I can only speak about season 1. Season 1 is actually quite restrained in that, which I really appreciated, because it creates quite stark contrast to the strange shit. When that occurs, it is all the more like, wait, what the fuck?
Well,
Why
it's like
is
the
there
introduction of Bob, Mike, the tiny little letters underneath the fingernails.
And Bob's just fucking there, like he appears in a mirror and then he's at the bottom of a bed grinning at someone, and then that's it. That's all you get.
Have you ever heard how he got the role, or no?
Yes, I have. David Lynch told that story.
It's wonderful, because it's just like...
It's the most David Lynch approach to anything. Like, he hadn't really thought of that character prior to that moment, or how that would work. And then, what's the name of the guy who plays Bob?
Frank Silva.
He wasn't cast as an actor in this or anything like that. He was the set dresser. He was working as a set dresser for Twin Peaks. But then just this particular pose and this particular way that he was standing in the room at the time made David Lynch go,
"You're fucking creepy looking, dude."
"Are you an actor, mate?" And he's like, and it's Hollywood, so of course the guy says yes. And it's like, cool, you just got cast. And that's how, like, one of the most iconic characters of Twin Peaks came to be, basically. And what I love about David Lynch's creative process is he has a plan, but he's always ready to kind of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, so like David Lynch is renowned for, although the script is written, the plot is written, if something's cool, he'll just do it. So a lot of his stuff has this like student film effect where it's like, it's more about the story.
Yeah, or how interesting it might be to do X, Y, or Z. And so if someone comes to him with an idea, he's very open to collaboration. One other thing I'd quite like to mention about Twin Peaks, and something that is quite iconic about it, is this is like sudden tonal shift, the television series, because the way it just shifts gears abruptly all throughout the 8 episodes of season 1 is quite something else.
Well, this was something I was trying to explain earlier, where it was like, the thing I like about David Lynch is the whole, he'll do something violent, scary, or even funny, and there'll be the long sweeping shot afterwards to let you like calm down again. David Lynch is the master of the jump scare, but like not in a shit way.
He's good at really just changing the gears on you all of a sudden. Like, a scene could have this really comedic tone, like something silly will be happening between Dale Cooper and Sheriff Harry Truman is eating a donut and can't reply.
Sheriff, let's get James Hurley up from cell 4 and talk to him straight. He was in love with Laura Palmer. My bet is she told him whatever dirt she knew about Mike and Bobby and who knows what else.
And then the next scene, they are discussing the quite gruesome details of the death of Laura Palmer. And it will just go like that. Suddenly you're onto this quite dark and unpleasant shit. And he does this all throughout the first season of Twin Peaks. And it is incredibly jarring, but incredibly fun as well, because you never know what to expect next. Because it can just suddenly change on you. One final thing that we should probably talk about as well is the really iconic scene of season 1, which is, what would you call it, like the Red Room, I guess?
Yeah, or the...
I don't know what that is yet. I'm familiar with the name, but I don't know what it is yet, so shh.
The Red Room, shall we say, for now.
Yeah, we'll call it the Red Room for spoiler avoidancing. But that's like this strange dream sequence that...
Or is it?
Or is it? Yeah, no, to be fair, they don't really explain... It's implied to be a dream sequence, but fuck knows what's going on there. And there's a very small man with a woman... He introduces his cousin, who looks exactly like Laura Palmer, but several characters in this series look exactly like Laura Palmer, so don't worry about it, it's fine. And they're all speaking backwards, and they're talking about gum for some reason.
That gum you like is about to come back into fashion.
And then the wee guy starts dancing, and yeah, it's all a bit odd. Is this the part where I get to talk about the music?
It's just really good. And God bless that man who wrote it, whose name I will not attempt to pronounce.
I'm gonna try and pronounce it. Angelo Badalamenti?
Yes.
Hey, first time, first try.
But it's him and Julie Cruz is the other one. Julie Cruz is the singer. She is in Twin Peaks. I can't remember which episode.
Yeah, she's in the first episode. She's at the Roadhouse singing the main theme with the actual lyrics to it as well. And she's the one who, I think, did she collaborate? Yeah, no, she collaborated with both Angelo Badalamenti and also David Lynch to do the lyrics. It's a really iconic song. You hear that and immediately you know it. Like, it creates that kind of sense of whatever the hell Twin Peaks is.
I say dread.
I don't know if dread's what I get from it. It's a somber song and it's a very sad song, but it's got a certain whimsy to it as well, which completely fits with the show as a whole. Okay, I am now going to ramble a bit about the music though. Angelo Badalamenti appears to be the master of the concept of the leitmotif. In terms of like recent TV compositions, I'd say this guy gets it in a massive fucking way. He just knows how to introduce characters through the music. Like, every single character has this particular, not quite a specific set of music. Like, it's not one piece of music that will play whenever that character appears. It's more like this kind of concept or this theme that can be remixed and changed about. But when it plays, you know that certain things are about to happen or certain characters are about to appear on screen. Audrey's a really good example of that. Whenever the clarinets get broken out and the music kind of takes on this mischievous and kind of whimsical tone, Audrey's about to appear on screen and she's probably going to do some mischief. And Dale Cooper has the same thing. Again, his kind of theme is very suave, it's very urbane, but again, it has that kind of upbeat approach, and it matches his personality and his whole vibe and his outlook, and that's really fucking hard to do well with music, but they nail it consistently in this show. So like 100%, this is some of the best music I've seen in a television series in a very fucking long time.
And there's even the Man from the Other Places theme, which is Dance for the Dream Man, which is fantastic. There's the love theme as well from Twin Peaks.
That plays usually with James and Donna, so I'm less vibey with that, but that's just me not enjoying that part of the series so much.
And then there's also Freshly Squeezed as well as a fantastic theme.
Yeah, no, he's a really talented composer, actually. I was really impressed by what he achieved with this.
I'm afraid this is going to be another one of our Samurai Flamenco style reviews, where it's like we're both just gushing over how great the series is. There is no negatives to Twin Peaks until season 2, and we'll get to that. But season 1 is perfect. Like, if they just ended it there, fantastic story. Just you wait.
I think if I had to be really picky and throw some grumbles out about season 1, it would probably be that I find the Donna and James plot a bit melodramatic and a bit...
But then you gotta remember, a lot of Twin Peaks is making fun of soap operas. So like...
Yeah, but we're not reviewing fucking Invitation to Love here, are we? We're reviewing Twin Peaks.
But you gotta remember how many of the characters are also mirroring Invitation to Love. And it's just like, there's a mockery inside a mockery inside a mockery. Because fuck you, I'm David Lynch and Mark Frost.
We're just gonna fire shots and...
ask questions later.
I love Invitation to Love, it's great. It's so fucking stupid.
Invitation to Love. Each day brings a new beginning, and every hour holds the promise of an invitation to love.
I guess I find their stuff a little drawn out. It's not as interesting to me.
Just you wait. I once read a visual guide on how to watch season 2, which was just skip anything that has James on the screen. So like you're about to get a lot angrier.
And it's a shame because both actors are doing their best. It's not as interesting as literally every other character in this series.
Huh? Look at Burns' suit! Yeesh!
It was ABC it's the ABC network that picked up Twin Peaks because at the time they were kind of flagging in their ratings and they basically decided, fuck it, we're going to do a bunch of weird shit and see what happens. But they were also hedging their bets, so at all points, I don't think anyone was expecting Twin Peaks to be as big as it was. So at all points, they were putting in mitigating factors like, okay, we want you to film another ending to this so that if this doesn't work out, we can at least maybe get something out of it as like a standalone thing. So yeah, no one was expecting Twin Peaks to be a success. That's something that when I was watching David Lynch when he was discussing it, when he's reflecting on it, he seemed genuinely surprised that people vibed with it as much as they did. But people really fucking vibed with this show.
It's one of them things that it's hard to discuss how important it is culturally.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here. The 2-hour pilot was the highest rated movie for the 1989 to 1990 season with a 21.7 rating, blah blah blah, who cares. In Los Angeles, Twin Peaks became the 7th most watched show of the week, earning 29% of viewers. So this show kind of came out of nowhere and just seemed to hit the cultural zeitgeist in a massive way. But yeah, I think that kind of draws back to what we were talking about earlier about Twin Peaks kind of being on the forefront of this newer and more experimental, director-driven approach to television that has led to where we are now with a lot of the shows you see these days. And without stuff like Twin Peaks, yeah, you wouldn't have any of this stuff.
To continue on from that, it's like the inspiration it had on other things, like the X-Files is the big one.
Yeah.
Without Twin Peaks, there's no X-Files. And without the X-Files, there's no... Because the X-Files writer is the guy who goes on to write Breaking Bad. Like, that's just direct.
Gilligan, isn't it?
But it's that direct link. But then there's also things like there's no Alan Wake, no Deadly Premonition, no Silent Hill, no Max Payne. Even Link's Awakening, like Zelda, is inspired by Twin Peaks. Yeah, the creative director for that is Takashi Tezuka, and he was like, yeah, no, I just wanted to make like suspicious characters and make it a mystery fun story. So yeah, Link's Awakening is inspired by Twin Peaks.
For me, personally, I'm a big fan of the Persona series. Persona 4 is the best. But after having now watched the first season of Twin Peaks, Persona 4 is straight up fucking... This is Twin Peaks, but with, anime characters.
I always find it funny how much of a big cultural thing Twin Peaks is in Japan.
Georgia ni makasero. Oh yeah, they love it. It's great. They fucking love it over there, man.
And it's one of them things where it's like,
This is something that comes up quite regularly when we discuss certain things, particularly Gundam and so on. There's certain subsets of people who are interested in manga and anime who have this idea that Japan is this strange, far-off land with these wonderful stories that emerge from the ether and are superior to all things that the decadent Westerners have ever come up with. And then when you actually look into it, it's like, no, all the stuff that you're into, it's this wonderful back and forth between cultures. Like, they are inspired by stuff that's happening over in America and in Europe, and we're in turn inspired by stuff that they're doing. It's this great back and forth. So like Gundam is a good example because that actually came from Heinlein novels like Starship Troopers, and then Gundam spins out of that, and then it bounces back over to the West and you have stuff like Pacific Rim developing as a result of it. So yeah, that really annoys me when people come out with that, because people who make stories, they're not doing that in a vacuum, and I wish people would fucking stop pretending otherwise.
So Dave, to kind of wrap this up so that we have some form of conclusion, so you don't have to edit more than an hour and a half for the video.
Oh, thank God.
How do you feel having now finally watched the first series of Twin Peaks?
Very intrigued and also slightly apprehensive to step into the second part of this story, to be honest, because I am aware that season 2 is both considered to be the best and the worst of Twin Peaks. But as a setup for what is to come next, this was really awesome. There are some aspects that I didn't enjoy as much as everything else, and obviously it is a bit on the slow side, and that maybe isn't for everybody, but as a very unusual and distinct piece of television, this is, yeah, shit, man, it's fucking great. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next. I get why I can also understand why David Lynch seemed kind of surprised that this did as well as it did, because it is so unusual and out there. Even now, having inspired all of these subsequent television series and the impact that it's had on pop culture, it's still a very weird and unusual series that you don't really get anywhere else. Rob, parting thoughts on season 1 then?
Welcome to Twin Peaks. The owls are not what they seem, Dave.